The station was old. It was falling apart. And Daniel Carter was the only human being for millions of miles in any direction. He woke up that morning the same way he had woken up every morning for the past 9 years. The alarm beeped 3 times. The lights flickered on, dim and yellow because half the bulbs had burned out years ago. He lay on his thin mattress and stared at the metal ceiling above him, counting the same rust spots he had counted 1,000 times before. 9 years, 3,287 days. He had kept track of every single one. Daniel was 31 years old when he first arrived at Outpost Meridian. The military had sent him here to maintain the communication beacon, a massive antenna that linked Earth to its farthest colonies. It was supposed to be a 2-year mission, a simple job: keep the machines running, send reports back home, wait for the next crew to arrive and take his place. But the next crew never came. In his second year, a massive solar storm hit the station. The radiation fried most of the communication equipment. Daniel spent weeks trying to fix it, but the damage was too severe. He could receive signals, but he could not send them. He could hear Earth, but Earth could not hear him. He listened to the news from home for 3 more months. He heard about wars and elections and sporting events. He heard about a new restaurant opening in his. He heard his mother give an interview about her missing son, about how she still believed he was alive somewhere out there. Then the receiver broke too, and there was only silence. Daniel was a practical man. He did not waste time feeling sorry for himself. He took stock of what he had: food supplies for 10 years if he was careful, water recyclers that would last indefinitely, a small greenhouse where he grew vegetables under artificial light, power cells that would keep running for decades. He could survive. The question was whether survival meant anything when no one knew you existed. The first year of total isolation was the hardest. Daniel talked to himself constantly just to hear a human voice. He made up conversations with people who were not there. He gave names to the stars he could see through his small window and pretended they were friends. He almost lost his mind. There were dark days when he thought about opening the airlock and stepping out into the void. It would be quick, it would be painless, and it would end the terrible loneliness that ate at him like a disease. But something stopped him every time. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was hope, maybe it was simply the human refusal to give up even when giving up made the most sense. So Daniel kept living. He maintained the station even though no one would ever use it. He repaired broken systems with parts he salvaged from other machines. He recorded daily logs even though no one would ever hear them. He became very good at being alone. The years passed slowly. Daniel watched alien ships fly by in the distance sometimes. They were tiny points of light moving against the background of stars. He did not know what species crewed those ships. He did not know if they were friendly or hostile. He only knew that they never stopped, never changed course, never showed any sign of noticing the small human outpost flickering in the darkness. He was invisible. He was forgotten. He was a ghost haunting an empty station at the edge of known space. By his 7th year alone, Daniel had stopped hopping for rescue. He had stopped recording logs. He had stopped talking to himself. He moved through his days in silence, eating because his body needed food, sleeping because his body needed rest, maintaining the station because it was the only thing he knew how to do. The greenhouse failed in year 8. A fungus got into the soil and killed most of his plants. Daniel managed to save a few, but his food supply dropped dramatically. He started rationing even more strictly, eating 1 small meal a day, feeling his body grow thin and weak. He looked at himself in the mirror one morning and did not recognize the man staring back at him. His hair had gone gray. His face was hollow and lined with wrinkles. His eyes had a distant look, like he was always staring at something far away. He was 40 years old, but he looked 60. On day 3,287, the life support system started making a sound Daniel had never heard before. It was a grinding noise, metal scraping against metal, something deep inside the machine breaking apart. He spent 6 hours trying to fix it. He replaced every part he could replace. He rerouted power from other systems. He did everything he knew how to do, but the grinding continued and the air started getting thin. Daniel sat down on the floor of the control room and looked at the blinking warning lights. He was not afraid. He was not sad. He was simply tired, more tired than he had ever been in his entire life. There was one option left, the emergency in the medical bay. It was designed for situations exactly like this, a way to preserve a crew member until help arrived. The pod had its own power supply, separate from the station. It could keep someone alive in frozen sleep for years, maybe decades. But there was no help coming. Daniel knew that. He had known it for a long time. He walked to the medical bay slowly, his legs weak from hunger and exhaustion. The sat against the wall, white and clean, the only thing on the station that still looked new. He had maintained it carefully all these years, even though he never expected to use it. He climbed inside and lay down on the cold surface. The pod was designed for quick activation. Just press a button and the system would do the rest. No complicated procedures. No need for assistance. Daniel pressed the button. As the cold started spreading through his body, he spoke one last time. His voice was rough from years of silence, barely more than a whisper. "This is Lieutenant Daniel Carter of Outpost Meridian. I kept the beacon running as long as I could. I did my duty. If anyone ever finds this station, I want them to know that humanity reached this far. We were here. We tried." The ice took him, his eyes closed, his heart slowed to almost nothing, his brain went quiet. Daniel Carter, the forgotten man at the edge of space, finally rested. He did not dream. He did not feel time passing. He simply stopped, frozen between life and death, while the universe continued on without him. The station kept drifting through the void. The warning lights kept blinking. The air kept getting thinner in the empty rooms. But in the medical bay, inside a white pod that hummed with quiet power, one human being remained alive, waiting for something that might never come. Time has no meaning when you are frozen. There is no day or night. There is no past or future. There is only the endless present, a single moment stretched out forever. Daniel Carter did not know that 10 years had passed, then 50, then 100. He did not know that Outpost Meridian had drifted far from its original position, pulled by the gravity of distant stars into a slow journey across the galaxy. The station became a tomb. The lights went out one by one. The air leaked away through cracks in the hull. Dust settled on every surface, thick and gray, covering the tools and machines that Daniel had used to keep himself alive. But they kept running. The engineers who built it had been very careful. They knew that space was dangerous and unpredictable. They knew that rescue might take a long time. So they built the pod to last, with 3 separate power systems and a shell thick enough to survive almost anything. It was not elegant technology. It was not advanced by the standards of other species in the galaxy. But it was tough and reliable, built by humans who refused to accept failure as an option. 100 years after Daniel went asleep, a small asteroid struck Outpost Meridian. The impact tore a hole in the main hull and sent the station spinning. Equipment flew through the air. Walls cracked and bent. The communication beacon, the one Daniel had spent 9 years maintaining, broke apart and scattered into space. It did not even shake. Its mounting bolts held firm. Its power systems continued their quiet work. Daniel slept on, unaware of the destruction around him. 200 years passed, 300, 400. The galaxy changed in ways Daniel could not have imagined. Earth had grown quiet. The signals that once filled the airwaves with news and music and conversation had stopped. The colonies that humanity had built across a dozen worlds went silent one by one. Ships stopped launching. Beacons stopped transmitting. The species that had once dreamed of spreading across the stars simply vanished. No one knew exactly why. There were theories, guesses, stories passed down through generations of other species. Some said a plague had killed them. Some said they had destroyed themselves in a war. Some said they had simply decided to leave, traveling to some distant part of the universe where no one could follow. The truth was lost to history. All that remained were ruins and artifacts, empty cities on dead worlds, machines that still worked even though no one was left to use them. Humanity became a legend, the species that burned bright and disappeared, the builders who made things that lasted forever, the dreamers who refused to stop hopping even when hope was foolish. Other civilizations rose and fell during those centuries. The Dominion conquered 17 star systems before their empire collapsed from corruption and greed. The Collective built great libraries of knowledge, then lost them all in a civil war that lasted 100 years. The Union discovered the secret of faster-than-light travel, then forgot it again when their scientists died without passing on their work. Empires came and went like waves on a shore. Species evolved and expanded and declined. The galaxy was a living thing, always changing, always moving, never staying the same for long. Through it all, a tiny station drifted in the void, and inside that station, one human being continued to sleep. 500 years after Daniel closed his eyes, a trading ship passed within scanning range of Outpost Meridian. The captain noticed the strange readings on his instruments and ordered a closer look. They found the station badly damaged but not completely destroyed. They found the still functioning, still protecting its cargo. They found a human being, frozen and preserved, the first any of them had ever seen in person. They were not kind creatures. They were traders and merchants, interested only in profit. They looked at Daniel and saw not a survivor or a miracle, but a curiosity that might be worth money to the right buyer. But when they tried to move it would not come free. The mounting bolts had fused with the deck over centuries of temperature changes. The power cables had grown into the station like roots. They tried cutting tools. They tried pry bars. They tried explosives. Nothing worked. The pod seemed determined to stay exactly where it was. Finally, the captain gave up. The effort was not worth the potential reward. He ordered his crew back to their ship and left the station behind. They continued its work. Daniel continued to sleep. 600 years, 700, 800. The galaxy forgot about humanity almost completely. The ruins were picked clean by scavengers. The artifacts were sold and resold until no one remembered where they came from. The stories became myths, and the myths became fairy tales, and the fairy tales became nothing at all. Only the remembered. They were an old species, older than most. They had been exploring the galaxy when humanity was still learning to make fire. They had watched countless civilizations rise and fall. They had seen species that seemed destined for greatness disappear overnight, and species that seemed doomed to extinction somehow survive. But humanity had been different. They had liked humans. They had admired their stubborn refusal to accept limits, their endless curiosity, their strange habit of helping others even when it cost them something. When humanity vanished, they mourned. They collected every human artifact they could find. They recorded every human story they could remember. They searched every corner of the galaxy for survivors, even when everyone else had given up. 842 years after Daniel Carter closed his eyes, a research vessel called the Ascending Thought detected a faint signal in an empty region of space. It was a life sign, very weak, very slow, but definitely present. Commander, the expedition leader, did not believe the readings at first. She ran the scan 3 more times. The result was always the same. Something was alive out there, in a part of space where nothing should be alive at all. She ordered her ship to change course. They found Outpost Meridian 2 days later. It was a wreck, barely recognizable as a station anymore. Holes gaped in the hull. Debris floated around it in a slow cloud. The interior was dark and dead. But in one small room, protected by walls that had somehow survived 8 centuries of damage, a white pod still hummed with power. Stood before it and looked at the face behind the frost-covered glass. It was a human face, she realized. The first living human anyone had seen in over 400 years. Her hands trembled as she touched the pod's surface. "We found one," she whispered. "After all this time, we finally found one." She did not know who this human was or how he had survived. She did not know what he would think when he woke up to find his entire species gone. But she knew that she would be there when his eyes opened. She knew that he would not wake up alone. They carefully removed the from the station and brought it aboard their ship. They began the long process of warming Daniel's body, bringing him back from the edge of death. And somewhere in the frozen depths of his mind, Daniel Carter started dreaming for the first time in 800 years. He dreamed of Earth. He dreamed of his mother's face. He dreamed of sunlight and grass and the sound of rain on a window. He dreamed of home. And he did not know that home was gone forever. Commander had studied humans for most of her life. She had read their books and listened to their music. She had examined their machines and walked through the ruins of their cities. She thought she understood them. But standing in front of looking at the frozen face behind the glass, she realized that she did not understand them at all. This man had survived for 842 years, not through advanced technology or alien assistance, but through simple stubbornness and careful engineering. His species had built a machine that refused to fail, and it had kept him alive long after everything else had died. That was very human thought. They always built things stronger than they needed to be, always prepared for disasters that might never come. It was inefficient by standards, but it worked. The revival process took 7 days. On the first day, the medical team raised Daniel's body temperature slowly, 1 degree at a time. They pumped warm fluids into his veins and monitored his heart for any signs of damage. The centuries of cold had been hard on his cells, but somehow his organs had survived intact. On the second day, his brain started showing activity again. Just small flickers at first, random electrical impulses with no pattern or meaning. Then the flickers became waves, and the waves became dreams. Watched the monitors and wondered what he was seeing in his sleep. Was he dreaming of Earth, of his family, of the years he had spent alone on that broken station, waiting for help that never came? On the third day, Daniel's heart started beating on its own. It was weak and irregular, skipping beats and struggling to find its rhythm. The medical team gave him medicine to strengthen the muscle, to help it remember how to work after centuries of stillness. On the fourth day, his lungs took their first breath. It was shallow and painful, a gasp more than a breath, but it was real. Air moved in and out of his body. His blood carried oxygen to his starving cells. Stood by his bed and watched his chest rise and fall. She had never seen a human breathe before. It seemed so fragile, so precarious. How did they survive at all with such delicate bodies? But they had survived, she reminded herself. For thousands of years, through ice ages and plagues and wars, they had survived, until they didn't. On the fifth day, Daniel's fingers moved. Just a small twitch, barely visible, but the medical team noticed it. His nervous system was waking up, reconnecting all the pathways that had been frozen for so long. On the sixth day, his eyes moved beneath his closed lids. He was dreaming more intensely now, his brain processing centuries of nothing all at once. The monitors showed spikes of activity that the doctors had never seen before. Human brains, they discovered, did not shut down the same way other species did. They kept working even in the deepest cold, holding onto something that refused to let go. On the seventh day, Daniel Carter opened his eyes. Was there when it happened. She had barely left his side all week, sleeping in short naps on a chair in the corner of the medical bay. She wanted to be the first thing he saw when he woke up. She wanted him to know immediately that he was not alone. His eyes were blue. She had read about human eye colors in her studies, but seeing them in person was different. They were bright and clear, like pieces of sky captured in glass. For a long moment, he just stared at the ceiling. His face showed no expression. His body did not move. Wondered if something had gone wrong, if his mind had been damaged by the long sleep. Then his eyes moved to her face and she saw recognition there. Not of her specifically, but of what she was. Something alive. Something other than himself. He tried to speak. No sound came out. His throat was too dry, too damaged from centuries of disuse. The medical team rushed forward with water and medicine, but held up her hand to stop them. She leaned close to Daniel's face and spoke slowly, clearly, making sure the translator in her collar could convert every word. "My name is, I am the commander of this ship. You are safe. You are among friends. Do not try to speak yet, just rest." Daniel's eyes searched her face. She could see the questions in them, hundreds of questions, maybe thousands. Where was he? How long had he been asleep? What had happened to everything he knew? She could not answer those questions yet, not until he was stronger, not until he was ready. But she could give him one small comfort. "You are not alone," she said. "You are not forgotten. We have been looking for you for a very long time." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. They spilled down his cheeks and soaked into the pillow beneath his head. He did not make a sound, but his whole body shook with silent sobs. Did not know much about human emotions. Her species expressed feelings differently, through colors and scents rather than physical displays. But she understood grief when she saw it. She understood relief. She reached out and took his hand in hers. His skin was warm now, alive, so different from the frozen thing she had found in that ruined station. She squeezed gently, trying to communicate without words. "I am here, you are real. This is not a dream." Daniel squeezed back. His grip was weak, but it was there. A connection. A reminder that he was still human, still capable of reaching out to another being. They stayed like that for a long time, hand in hand, while the medical machines beeped and hummed around them. Over the next few days, Daniel slowly regained his strength. He learned to speak again, his voice rough and hoarse at first, then gradually clearer. He learned to eat solid food, his stomach protesting after centuries of nothing. He asked questions and answered them as best she could. Yes, the had worked. Yes, he had been asleep for a very long time. Yes, the galaxy had changed while he was frozen. Yes, other species existed, many of them, spread across thousands of star systems. She told him about their long history and their love of knowledge. She told him about the other species they had met, and dozens more. She told him about the wars that had been fought and the empires that had risen and fallen. She told him everything, except the one thing he most needed to know. Daniel was patient at first. He listened to her stories and asked polite questions. He practiced walking in the corridors of the ship, getting used to his body again. He ate his meals and took his medicine, and did everything the doctors told him to do. But after 3 days, he finally asked the question had been dreading. "Where is Earth? Where are the colonies? I want to contact them. I want to let them know I'm alive." Looked at his face, at the hope shining in his blue eyes, and she felt something break inside her chest. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for it, rehearsing the words in her mind over and over. But now that it was here, she found that all her preparation meant nothing. "Daniel," she said softly, "there is something I need to tell you, something difficult." She watched the hope drain from his eyes, replaced by fear. He knew, she realized. Some part of him had known all along. He just had not been ready to face it. "How bad is it?" he asked. Took a deep breath. "I am sorry," she said. "Humanity is gone. The Great Silence took them 400 years ago. No one knows exactly what happened, but Earth is empty. The colonies are empty. You are the last of your kind." Daniel did not react at first. He just stood there, his face blank, his body still. Then he turned and walked away and let him go. Some things could not be shared. Some grief had to be carried alone. She only hoped that he would find a reason to keep carrying it. Daniel did not leave his room for 3 days. The crew gave him space. They left food outside his door and checked on him through the medical sensors built into the walls. He was alive. He was breathing. But he did not eat, did not sleep, did not respond to any attempts at communication. Worried, she had seen species react badly to loss before. She had seen individuals give up on life when everything they loved was taken from them. She was afraid that Daniel would become one of those, another tragedy added to the long history of the galaxy. But on the 4th day, his door opened. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. His face was pale and thin. His hands shook when he walked, but he was standing. He was moving. He had chosen to keep going. Met him in the corridor outside his room. "I need to see it," Daniel said. His voice was flat and empty. "Earth, the colonies, I need to see what happened." Hesitated. The journey to Earth would take weeks. The planet was far from their current position, in a region of space that most species avoided. There was nothing there anymore except ruins and ghosts. "Are you sure?" she asked. "It might be better to wait until you are stronger." Daniel shook his head. "I spent 9 years waiting," he said. "Then I spent 800 years sleeping. I am done waiting. I need to know." Understood. She gave the order to change course. The journey took 23 days. During that time, Daniel slowly came back to life. He started eating again, small meals at first, then larger ones. He started sleeping, his nights filled with dreams that made him cry out in the darkness. He started talking, asking questions about the galaxy and its history. Told him everything she knew. She showed him recordings of human cities before the Great Silence, bustling with life and activity. She played him human music that they had preserved, songs about love and loss and hope. She read him human poetry, words that had survived long after the people who wrote them had disappeared. Daniel listened to it all with a strange expression on his face. It was grief, yes, but also something else. Pride, maybe, or wonder. "We did all that?" he asked one evening, after watching a recording of a human orchestra performing in a great concert hall. "We made all that beauty." "Yes," said. "Your species was remarkable. You existed for such a short time compared to others, but you created so much. Art and music and literature, science and technology, philosophy and faith. You touched everything, and everything you touched became better." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I was just a maintenance technician," he finally said. "I fixed broken machines on a station nobody cared about. I never did anything important." Shook her head. "You kept a beacon running for 9 years," she said. "Alone, without help, without hope. You refused to give up even when giving up would have been easier. That is important. That is extraordinary." Daniel did not seem convinced, but something in his eyes shifted, just a little. A small spark of something that might have been hope. They reached Earth on the 24th day. The planet hung in space like a blue-green jewel, beautiful and terrible at the same time. From a distance, it looked almost normal. Clouds swirled over continents. Oceans glittered in the sunlight. Mountains rose and valleys dipped across the surface. But as the ship drew closer, Daniel could see the truth. The cities were dark. No lights shone from the great capitals that had once held millions of people. No ships rose from the spaceports. No signals came from the communication towers. Earth was a graveyard. Daniel stared at it through the observation window, his hand pressed against the glass. He did not speak. He did not cry. He just looked, taking in every detail, burning it into his memory. stood beside him, silent and respectful. "Can we go down?" Daniel asked finally. "Can I walk on the surface?" Nodded. She had prepared for this request. A shuttle was ready in the launch bay, equipped with everything they would need for a brief visit. They landed in what had once been a great city. The buildings were still standing, but nature had begun to reclaim them. Vines grew up the walls. Trees pushed through cracks in the streets. Animals lived in the empty rooms, creatures that had evolved in the centuries since humanity had vanished. Daniel walked through the ruins slowly, touching walls and doorframes, picking up small objects and examining them. A child's toy, a kitchen utensil, a book with faded pages that crumbled at his touch. "This was a school," said, pointing to a large building covered in moss. "We found records indicating that human children were educated there." Daniel walked inside. The desks were still arranged in rows, small and low to the ground. Papers lay scattered on the floor, covered in dust but still readable. Drawings made by small hands. Simple math problems. Stories about adventures and dreams. He knelt down and picked up one of the drawings. It showed a stick-figure family standing in front of a house. A sun smiled down from the corner of the page. Flowers grew in a garden. It was the most ordinary thing in the world, and it broke Daniel's heart completely. He sat on the floor of that ruined classroom and cried. Not the silent tears he had shed in the medical bay, but great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. He cried for the children who had drawn these pictures. He cried for the parents who had raised them. He cried for the teachers who had taught them and the friends who had played with them and the futures they had all lost. He cried for everyone. He cried for humanity. Sat beside him and waited. She did not try to comfort him or stop him. She simply stayed, a quiet presence, a reminder that he was not completely alone. When the tears finally stopped, Daniel took a deep breath and stood up. "Thank you," he said for bringing me here, for showing me this. I needed to see it." "I understand," she replied. Daniel looked around the ruined classroom one more time. "We were here," he said softly. "We lived and loved and dreamed and hoped. And even though we are gone, something of us remains. In these buildings, in these drawings, in the stories your people tell about us." He turned to face. "Is that enough?" he asked. "Is that what a legacy is, just memories and ruins?" Considered the question carefully. "For most species, yes," she said. "But humanity was different. Your legacy is not just what you left behind. It is what you gave to others while you were here." Daniel frowned, not understanding. Smiled. "There is something else I need to show you," she said. "Something I have been waiting to share until you were ready." "What is it?" "You will see. We need to return to the ship first. And then we need to travel to a place where the whole galaxy has been waiting to meet you." Daniel did not know what she meant, but he followed her back to the shuttle, carrying the child's drawing carefully in his hands. Whatever was coming, he would face it. He had survived 9 years alone. He had survived 8 centuries of frozen sleep. He had survived learning that everything he loved was gone. He could survive anything now. Or at least he hoped he could. The journey took another week. Would not tell Daniel where they were going, only that it was important and that he needed to be patient. He tried to be patient, but patience was hard when your mind kept spinning with questions. During the trip, showed him more recordings from the archives. She showed him videos of humans interacting with alien species for the first time. Meetings that could have been disasters but somehow became friendships. Moments of fear that turned into moments of joy. She showed him a recording of a human farmer teaching traders how to grow crops in poor soil. They had been starving, their colony failing, their people dying. The human had spent 3 months with them, sharing knowledge that he had learned from his grandparents, techniques passed down through generations on Earth. "That farmer saved our colony," the elder said in the recording. "We owed him everything. We offered him wealth, power, anything he wanted. Do you know what he asked for in return? The interviewer shook her head. He asked us to teach the next species we met. He said that knowledge was meant to be shared, not hoarded. He said that was the human way. Daniel watched the recording with tears in his eyes. Showed him another video. This one featured a human musician performing for a crowd of scholars. They were a serious species, dedicated to logic and reason. They did not understand art or beauty. They thought music was a waste of time. But as the human played her instrument, something changed. The scholars stopped looking bored. They leaned forward in their seats. Their eyes widened with wonder. When the performance ended, one of the scholars stood up and spoke. I have studied the mathematics of the universe for 300 years, he said. I have seen galaxies born and stars die. I thought I understood everything there was to understand. But this human and her music have shown me something I never knew existed. Beauty. Pure, useless, wonderful beauty. I did not know the universe contained such a thing. He turned to the human musician. Thank you. You have changed my entire species with a single song. Daniel could not watch anymore. The recordings were too much, too overwhelming. He was just one person. How could he possibly represent everything humanity had been? On the seventh day, came to his room with a strange expression on her face. We are almost there, she said. You need to come to the observation deck. Daniel followed her through the corridors of the ship. The crew members they passed looked at him with something new in their eyes, not curiosity anymore, something deeper, something that almost looked like reverence. They reached the observation deck, a large room with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. Daniel had been here before, during the long journey from Earth. He had stood at these windows and looked out at the stars, trying to find meaning in their distant light. But what he saw now was not stars. It was ships. Thousands of them, maybe millions. They filled the void in every direction, so many that they blocked out the darkness behind them. Large ships and small ships, sleek ships and bulky ships, ships in every color and shape and size that Daniel could imagine. He stepped closer to the window, his mouth hanging open, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. What is this? He whispered. Stood beside him. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. After humanity vanished, the galaxy mourned. Every species your people had helped, every civilization you had touched, they all felt the loss. For years, they did not know how to cope. The universe seemed darker without humans in it. She paused, gathering herself. Then someone suggested a search. Not a single ship or a single expedition, but a combined effort from everyone who had ever known humanity. A fleet dedicated to finding survivors, to bringing back even one small piece of what was lost. Daniel stared at the ships outside the window. He could see symbols on their hulls, emblems from dozens of different species. Some he recognized from recordings. Others were completely foreign. They have been searching for 400 years, continued. Every corner of the galaxy, every abandoned station, every drifting ship, looking for one human, just one, to prove that your species was not completely gone. She turned to face Daniel. We call it the Human Remembrance Expedition. And today, after 4 centuries of searching, we finally succeeded. Daniel could not speak. He could not even breathe. Across the fleet, lights began to blink. Communication signals, Daniel realized. Messages being broadcast from ship to ship, spreading the news of what had been found. Then the translator in his ear crackled to life, and he heard voices. Hundreds of voices, thousands of voices, all speaking different languages but all saying the same thing. Welcome back, human. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are loved. The words repeated over and over, in every language the galaxy knew. A chorus that stretched across the void, reaching Daniel through the cold glass of the observation window. He fell to his knees. He had spent 9 years alone, thinking that no one cared about him. He had spent 8 centuries frozen, completely unaware that the entire galaxy was searching for him. He had woken up believing that humanity was lost forever, that everything his species had built and dreamed and hoped for had disappeared without a trace. But he had been wrong. Humanity's legacy was not the ruins on Earth. It was not the artifacts in museums or the recordings in archives. It was the love that they had planted in the hearts of everyone they met. It was the kindness they had shown, the knowledge they had shared, the beauty they had created. That legacy had grown while Daniel slept. It had spread across the stars, touching every corner of the galaxy. And now it had brought the entire universe to his door, just to tell him one simple truth. You matter, your species mattered, and we will never let you be forgotten. Daniel wept. He wept for everything he had lost and everything he had found. He wept for the family he would never see again, and the family he had just discovered. He wept for the 9 years of loneliness and the 8 centuries of sleep and the impossible miracle of being alive in this moment. Knelt beside him and took his hand. "What do you want to do now?" she asked gently. "The whole galaxy is waiting for your answer." Daniel looked up at the fleet outside the window. All those ships, all those species, all that hope and love and gratitude gathered together for one ordinary maintenance technician from a forgotten station at the edge of space. He thought about the beacon he had kept running all those years, the small light he had refused to let go out, even when no one was watching. It turned out that someone had been watching all along. He squeezed his hand and stood up slowly. "I want to meet them," he said. His voice was rough, but it was strong. "I want to thank them, and I want to tell them about humanity, not the legends or the myths, the real stories, the ordinary people who did extraordinary things simply by being kind." Smiled. "Then let us begin," she said. "You have a lot of stories to tell, and the galaxy has a lot of time to listen." Daniel took one last look at the fleet outside the window. Somewhere out there, he knew, his species still lived, not in bodies or buildings, but in the hearts of everyone they had touched. He had finally rested after 9 years of struggle. He had slept for 800 years in frozen darkness. But when he woke, he found something that left him speechless. He found that love never dies, kindness never disappears, and no one who truly touches another heart is ever truly forgotten. Daniel Carter, the last human, stepped forward into a galaxy full of friends. And for the first time in a very long time, he was not alone.